Good morning, goedemorgen, bonjour everyone. On behalf of the Belgian Business Club and the Consulate General of Belgium in Los Angeles, thank you for joining us today for a special live session where we'll speak about entertainment, animation, streaming, and maybe much more. After all, we are in Hollywood. A few words about our organization first. We help Belgian entrepreneurs to connect with the right professionals in the regions to stimulate business and enable networking. Our extensive network and knowledge of ecosystems in various industries in the region, including entertainment, give you an interesting entry point if you are looking to open your business or expand it on the West Coast. I would like to welcome our Consul General, Ambassador Slewagen, who is joining us today to support the success of Belgians in the entertainment business in the US, and will address some closing words at the end. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. And let me introduce you to our special guest today, the Belgian movie director, Ben Stassen. Ben is also producer and screenwriter. He got his graduate degree from the USC Cinema School here in Los Angeles. After leaving USC, he produced My Uncle Legacy, nominated for a Golden Globe in '90. He founded his company N-Wave Pictures in '92 and began focusing on large format films called IMAX, as we know all. His first feature-length animated film, Fly Me to the Moon, was released in North America in 2008, exclusively in 3D. The Queen's Gorky, the seventh feature animated project from Stassen, was released in 2019. Ben and N-Wave Pictures released Bigfoot Family on February 26 on the Netflix platform in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, and the UK. Just 2 days after its release, it became the first European, excluding UK, feature to be the most watched feature film on Netflix in all English-speaking territories. Ben already directed 19 movies and produced 22. Today, you will have the possibility to ask your question directly to Ben by using the Q&A or the chat box. Ben will answer to your question at the end of our conversation. So Ben, thank you for being here today. I know you have a very busy schedule. We appreciate your availability for our local Belgian community. I watched Bigfoot Family this weekend and I absolutely love the story, the quality of images, and especially the water and character faces, and the other Belgian touch with the amazing music. So my first question is simple. How are you? How do you feel and live this first space on Netflix in the US and other countries? And congratulations.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being able to share the experience with you. I must say we are quite overwhelmed. We were hoping for successful release. It's our first, all our films have been released on Netflix, but as a second or third run, meaning the film first come out in movie theaters, then video on demand, etc., and then it comes on Netflix. This is the first time that we had a Netflix exclusive, where it's the only platform where the film is going to be shown. Personally, without any prior experience with that kind of release, I was hoping to make the top 5. Making the top 1, we had not expected that. Making the top 1 in all the English-speaking territories was even more amazing. And then the fact that we stayed on number 1 for the whole week in the United States was just amazing. So we are overwhelmed and we're very, very, very happy.
That's great. That's a very Belgian success story. So you founded your company in the Brussels capital region in '92, and you are creating your films from there for the worldwide market. So to be successful in the entertainment world, and especially in the US, you don't need to have a strong presence in the US. I mean, what are the advantages to stay local? And given the success you had with your own productions, can you imagine to see your animation art and techniques into other movies that you are not directing?
I will disagree a little bit with your statement in the sense that I graduated from USC Film School. After graduation, I stayed in the US for quite a few years. And I realized that as a foreigner in the US, it was an additional challenge to make it in the US. And I'd been to school with a bunch of people that became really famous, that directed really big film like U2, Rotten and Hum, Hudson Hawks, etc., etc. But in Hollywood, you're always as good as your last film. And I wanted to kind of have my destiny my own end, as much as that's possible in the filmmaking world. But so I thought maybe the baggage that I acquired in the US by going to school and by working a bunch of years in the US full time, I thought maybe if I took that back to Europe and tried to apply that there, it would be helpful. But it's never been, I left the US, I'm in Belgium. No, it's always been a foot in both places. And that's really crucial. Without that, we would not be where we are today. The films are entirely made in Brussels in terms of the animation. There's two crucial elements that are made still that we do in the US. The script writing, even though for the previous films, when we're doing IMAX films and theme park films, I was writing the scripts, but no longer on the feature films. Feature films, I wrote the story of a number of films, including a Bigfoot Family, but then we have North American screenwriters write the screenplays. So that work takes place in North America. A second thing that we always do in the US is the voice recording. Actually, I'm coming back to Los Angeles in 2 weeks to do the voice recording on our 10th film. Bigfoot was our 8th film. We are in the middle of the production of the 9th film, and we're starting the film after that. And I'll be in LA to do the voice recording. But really, having a foot in both places. Actually, we even have a company based in Los Angeles, and it's my son-in-law that's handling it. It's actually about a mile from the consulate. And it's really important. It's really important to keep the connection with the US and have the best of both worlds. Now, let's not forget, we are a pure product. What we do is computer animation. We are a pure product of the digital revolution. In 1990, after I'd worked for a number of years in the US, after I graduated from USC, I discovered a computer graphic workstation. At that time, today, when we talk about that today, yeah, okay, any computer can create images, but that was not the case 30 years ago. A computer that could produce images cost $25,000 for one computer. But when I saw that, I thought I was just mesmerized by it, because I thought this is a mini Hollywood studio on a desktop. In the future, we'll be able to do entire film. I was thinking maybe animation, but also feature film. Let's face it, films like Lords of the Ring and many, many films today could not exist without computer technology. So now that we have that, we have the same technologies, whether you are based in Brussels, Belgium, in Los Angeles, or on a South Pacific island. The same, when we started, it's very interesting to put that in perspective. When we did our first film in 2008, Fly Me to the Moon. Fly Me to the Moon was the 13th film, animated film released. The first one being released 12 years earlier in 1996, Toy Story. So at that time, it was quite challenging 12 years ago, because there were off-the-shelf software, but most of the companies like Pixar and DreamWorks were developing their own software. We didn't have the in-house capability of doing that. So we need to buy off-the-shelf equipment and software. Today, it's completely possible. And today, I'm talking about 13 films from 1996 to 2008. Today, 25 to 30 computer animated feature films are made every year. So it's a total different world. Now, so that's one aspect. Another aspect is the digital technology. And I know often, when we talk about streaming platforms like Netflix, people, especially in Europe, producers say, wow, American soft power. They're gonna, the US has been leading two industries for the last century: armament, military equipment, and films. That's the two areas where they've always been number one in the world, nonstop since the beginning of 1990 and so on. So people saw the streaming as one more way that we're going to be crushed by the power of in fact, no. The digital technology, as I say, just on the production side, you can now move your operation to Belgium, for instance, and still have a foot in the US. Same thing with distribution now. It's amazing what's happening, because if you look at the last 2 months, we are the first European to hit #1 in so many territories at once. But before us, there was a TV series called Arsène Lupin, which is a French TV series that is subtitled, which would have been unheard of just a few years ago. That was a mega hit on Netflix. So we feel that streaming platforms is an opening for us, not some threat or anything like that. But truly, having a foot on both sides of the ocean, our next project, for instance, is another example. It's called Chicken Hair, and it's a project I'm doing. I received, I would say, from Sony Pictures. And again, if we didn't have this relationship and this network and the contacts that we have by having a foot in the US and a foot in Belgium, would never have been able to convince a huge entertainment company like Sony to work with us. And so it's a really good balance. And I find it works really well. But having said that, in the past, the English-speaking territories were challenging. All our films have been quite successful. In Europe, when you have a feature film that does more than 5 million admissions in theater, it's considered a hit. Our least successful film did 6.5 million. That was Robinson Crusoe. Our most successful was Sammy, 11 million. So the films in the past were successful, but not so in the English-speaking territories. And I would be grateful forever to Netflix to have put us up there with the with the big guys.
Message passed. Thank you. To come back to your latest movies, Bigfoot Family, can you explain in a few steps to our audience what are the big milestones from the idea of storytelling to the distribution on a streaming platform and eventually to be number one on it?
When we decided, we were and we still are one of the leading supplier and producer and distributors of what we call specialty films for IMAX, for theme parks, for museum, all kinds of formats. When we decided to go feature film in 2005, 2006, our first film being released in 2008, Fly Me to the Moon, we did that because we saw that 3D was coming to the multiplex, to the feature film industry, and we were one of the leading experts in 3D cinema, stereoscopic cinema. I had written all the scripts for all the previous films, but I didn't feel competent enough to write a feature-length script. So we started to look for scripts. And so of the 8 films that we've done, we have acquired some scripts and I've developed 3 stories. In fact, the first Bigfoot, because Bigfoot Family is the second episode, is a sequel. The first one was written by Canadian writers. We bought it, we reworked it slightly with them, and then we brought it to screen. The second one, actually, I wrote the story of Bigfoot Family, but the same writers wrote the script. So it started like that. We bought a script. The first one was quite successful, but our main motivation actually to do a number 2 was not to ride on the success of the first one, but we were so in love with the characters. Of all the films I've done, it's the characters of Bigfoot Family that I like the best. I think like the raccoon, the bear, of course, the main characters, the son, Bigfoot, and the mother. But the secondary characters are really great. And we wanted to play more with them. So that was kind of the motivation. And we thought, let's develop another story. And that's how it took off. Then you write the script. Once the script is written, the first thing you do, I come back to Los Angeles, do the voice recording, because everything depends on the actor's performance. It's voice talent. It's quite complicated because these actors work from nothing. They have a page in front of them and they have to act the part. And they're not in a physical environment. They're just in a studio behind a mic. So it's a whole process, but that's really crucial because the tempo, it's real acting. It's voice acting, but it's real acting that's going to determine everything else that comes after that. Once we've done that, we start working on the storyboards, what we call the animatic. The animatic is a very basic rendering of the entire film animation, the very basic. And then we go into the animation. So it's quite, filmmaking and TV is a very fragmented process. When you do a feature film with live action actors, you produce a few minutes, a couple, 2, 3, 4 minutes per day. In animation, it's even more fragmented than that. One animator, a talented animator, will animate between 24 and 30 frames per day. We know it's 24 frames per second. It's about a second a day of animation. So you multiply that by the length of the film, by the number of characters, it's really fragmented. And so it's a whole process. And then, so you go, it takes us, just to give you an idea, our films have a budget between 17 and 20 million euros. So it's a little bit, at 20% in US dollars. And we make all our films within a 24 to 30 months period. So about 2 years per film, with about 100, 120 people working in Belgium. Plus then, what we do in the US, but mostly all the animation is done in Belgium. Compared to the US, not a single US film, or very seldom, is a US feature animated film costing less than 100 million. So, but our competition is not other Belgian studios, it's the big guys in the US. So we have to make films that still have that kind of international appeal and international quality, but with a fraction of the cost. And that's quite challenging, but it's part of the process. And that's why it's so rewarding to be number one in the English speaking territories, knowing that, the other films are films from the very, very big studios.
Yeah. And maybe to illustrate that, I suggest we watch together a video of the making of for your Bigfoot Family film. And just for the audience, please note that the quality and the image and the sound might not be optimal, but because we stream into Zoom. So let's enjoy the making of.
Hello, my name is Jeremy de Gozan. I'm a co-director on Bigfoot Family, and you're watching the making of.
You never really got to know the half of it. Maybe you could take a stand. There's something that you wanted, but it's out of hand. Yeah. Okay, I'm not all of that, and it probably wasn't written in the stars above. Yeah. It's all that I did. You might think that it's all we got, but it is ours, and it matters to return to dust. Yeah. So don't take it rough, 'cause the limit is the only thing we're making up. If it's not enough, we'll take a little time before we break it up. Yeah. It's all that I did, and I'll go and do it my way. Never think about what they say. And enough is enough. Give it all that you got. You'll go and do it your way. Whatever was the one made. Everything was all you wanted to be. Said it's gotta be yours.
What are you, a stunt pilot?
Oh, I thought you'd never act.
Hi. Yes, I am with Adam.
And also, Brinkman, don't try to eat this entire bag of marshmallow.
Wow. I hope you all enjoyed the making of, and you can rewatch it on the Enwave Pictures YouTube channel if you want. So thank you, Ben. Speaking of talents, and we have plenty of them in Belgium, I was wondering what you would recommend to Belgians looking to start a career in acting, voiceover, technical, or business in the entertainment here in the US. You graduated from a prestigious cinema school in LA. Is this the right path to approach a career and follow the steps of our famous Jean-Claude Van Damme and more recently Matthias Schoenaerts or Adil Al-Arbi and Bilal Fallah, to cite a few, and yours? We receive a lot of questions on this topic, so an expert advice will be very nice.
Yes, it's true. I mean, I studied political sciences in Belgium, and then I came to do graduate school at USC. And USC was and still is one of the most prestigious film schools in the world. But truly, when I graduated, and I did work in the US, and I did enjoy very much working full time in the US. But I thought that it was going to be a challenge to really try to make it in the US, starting in the US. So that's why I started to have a link. In fact, when I started, and for still now, I'm still going between both worlds. But the company, the animation company, was started in Brussels, Belgium. When you look at, you mentioned Jean-Claude Van Damme, and a number of other talent from Belgium, both on the acting side, maybe even on the technical side. I think the best advice is make a name for yourself in Europe, in Belgium. To try to break it in the US from scratch is really, really difficult. Even Jean-Claude Van Damme had not acted before he came to the US, but he was a martial art expert. He had won a lot of competition. So it was already a recognizable name. And who took him under his wing? Chuck Norris. And that's how it went for him to become an actor. You mentioned Matthias Schoenaerts. He also, look at film directors. Paul Verhoeven from the Netherlands. He did successful Dutch films before he came to the US and made big films like Robocop, etc., etc. So it's the case with a lot of. Schwarzenegger is another example. Okay, he was not acting, but he was Mr. Universe before he came to the US and became an actor. So my advice would be to try to really come here and break here is really, really challenging. So, and you know, and again, now with the online channels, I'm talking YouTube and all these different channels, with the streaming platforms, now you really, not only do we have the same tools in Belgium that you can have in the biggest production centers in the world, like London or Los Angeles, but we also have access to distribution channels. And so that would be my advice. And then, of course, Los Angeles is and remains the mecca of filmmaking, and everybody dreams of making it and coming to Los Angeles. But it is being decentralized, and so I think that would be the best advice I think I could give. But my experience is not everybody else's experience, but that's what I would say.
Thank you. Of course, the entertainment industry, like many others, everything has changed over the past years. I remember watching your movie, The Son of Bigfoot, the first part of the Bigfoot series here in Los Angeles a few years ago, with people around me and feeling the emotion of the theater, of being together. And the rise of the streaming service started way before the pandemic, but increased dramatically in usage since 1 year. So when the pandemic will be over, do you feel that theaters will be operating at the same level that pre-pandemic? And if not, the shift towards only streaming platforms, is that an opportunity or a threat for the movie business? And I just read this morning that in the LA Times that the filming in LA saw a huge increase in February with 700 films permit and up to 43% from previous months. So we are back in the business, I think.
I think, I'm not sure we'll ever go back truly the way it was before. For sure, out-of-home entertainment, movie-going experience will remain there. But I think it's going to be more and more, it was already a little bit the case, but even more so the big tentpole movies, the big, expensive action movies, you still will want to go and see them in a movie theater. Smaller films, maybe not. Now, if you would have asked me the question 4 or 5 years ago, I will say, no, you have to see the film in the theater. But now let's face it, home cinemas, TV screens, big flat screens with really high quality pictures, great sound, the in-home movie experience is becoming quite good. It's made the social part of it, where you are sharing the experience with a bunch of people, is not the same. But from a technical standpoint, I think it's there. I mean, the home cinema is there. And again, 10 years ago, it was an expensive, multi-thousands of dollars to have your own cinema. But today, you can, everybody has really, or most everybody, have really fantastic big screen at home with 4K resolution and then a 6.1 sound, surround sound, and all that. So I'm not okay. Initially, I come from the out of home, the specialty films. That's IMAX films. That's gigantic films for theme parks with 3D, with physical effects in the theater. So I still like that kind of immersive out of home experience. But I think both have validity, and I think that the pandemic has accelerated the move towards. And I think the biggest impact, the biggest short-term impact, God knows what, if audience will go back to the movie theaters in such large numbers. I lost my train of thought. I was going to the big short-term impact. It's the window, the distribution window. It used to be, and still in Europe, like in France, they have legal windows where you cannot release a film on a streaming platform for 18 months after it's in the movie theater. You have to wait 18 months before you can go on a streaming platform. You don't have these rules and regulations in the US and most of the territories around the world, but there was still a reasonable window, multiple months window between a theatrical release and a streaming. And now that's going to be shortened, no matter what. Now some films have gone directly, like our film in the English-speaking territories, but I think we're going to see things happening in a matter of weeks, not months. And that's going to have a big impact. So they're going to still capture big audiences in the movie theater, but it's going to have an impact. Now, having said that, we also know that from a distribution standpoint, the first weekend represent often 25 to 30% for a big successful film of the audience. The first week and second weekend is more than half of the audience. So after 2 or 3 weeks, most of the people have seen it in the movie theater. Now, very successful films sometimes run for weeks and even months, but the bulk, 80% of 99% of the film capture their audience in the first few weeks. And then, now, knowing that the film is going to come on a streaming platform 2 or 3 weeks after the theatrical release, will it slow down people from going to the theater? Maybe a certain age group, maybe the older, or maybe the very young. But I still think that people will want that going out of home experience, that immersive experience that the movie theater gives you.
And now I will ask you a tricky question. Sorry for that, but I think it's important I ask that. Taking into account that Bigfoot Family movie story speaks about a father who uses his name to fight against an Alaska oil company, do you consider that movie directors have a role to play or even a responsibility in educating and informing the public through films?
Well, not really a responsibility. If that comes with the package, that's great. If you can create an entertaining film that people enjoy on an entertainment level first, and they get something out of it, that's great. Now, having said that, for me personally, I do have it a little bit in my DNA. Let's not forget, for the first 20 years of my career, I was doing films in IMAX, for museum, for theme parks. Well, theme parks was a bit different because that was pure entertainment, but IMAX film all had to have an educational component. I once made my first IMAX film, was a film about roller coaster called Thrill Ride, but it had a subtitle, The Science of Fun. So we had to package. My intention was create a dynamic, going on roller coaster rides and all kind of stuff. But we still had to find an angle to make it acceptable for musea around the world to put it into an educational package. That's what we did with most of our films. My second film was a comedy about the history of 3D cinema. But yeah, there was history of photography. So there was that historical component. So I think that has remained with me a little bit in terms of maybe subconsciously. But no, having said that, I am quite sensitive to the climate change and the environment. So if you look at my first film, Sammy was very much some of these elements as well about climate change and so here I thought, you know, that would be a nice way to give meaning to Bigfoot's life and to try to go on a mission. And but you know, it's not the primary goal. It's not. I don't see it as my mission to, you know, to. But if that comes with the package, that's great. You have to be subtle though, because you don't want to also be, you know, accused of. Well, we were accused in the US by some reviewers I saw a review that labeled the film as a instrument of radical left-wing propaganda.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Bigfoot Family here, so you know, I think that's a bit, you know, pushing it, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, politics.
Yeah.
Last question before we dive into the Q&A part. In the two Bigfoot movies, the soundtrack plays an important role, and you choose to work with a Belgian band called Buggy. Why that, for me, excellent choice, and how do you start to collaborate with them?
Well, I've done all my previous films. I was very fortunate. For Fly Me to the Moon, I hired a young talent that was a protege of Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer being one of the greatest composers in Hollywood, and his name is Ramin Djawadi. And Ramin did his first feature was actually Fly Me to the Moon, and he's done all my soundtracks after that. And Ramin has now become a superstar. Ramin did big features like Iron Man, but he did Games of Thrones and Westworld. He won the Grammy for that. So now he's a superstar, and because we're friends, he's still working with me. Otherwise, I probably couldn't afford him anymore. But it's been a great relationship. And with Bigfoot, I decided to work with Buggy because we wanted more of a rock and roll approach to it. Ramin is also very rock and roll, but his strength is more symphonic music, and he's been a composer of big soundtracks in Hollywood. But here I wanted more of a visceral sound, and Buggy was the ideal choice. Buggy is one of our best known rock group in Belgium. They're very talented. They were quite nervous in the first one because they had never done a soundtrack, and but it worked out really good. And then on the second one, they were even more enthusiastic, and they do everything. They do the score, so the music composition, but also they write the songs, because there's some. We heard one in the making of, a really beautiful song. They write it, they perform it, and so it's been a real fun experience working with them.
Cool. So before opening the Q&A part, I will launch a very small context in the chat box with a question for those who have already seen Bigfoot Family movie. So the first 3 good answers will get a Belgian prize, and I will follow up by email for the prize. So I launch the context in the chat box right now. So we have plenty of questions. The first one I received previously is, given the massive worldwide success of Bigfoot Family, do you plan on making another movie in the series? So that's an obvious question.
I don't know yet. It's a possibility. I must say, most major US studios do a lot of 1, 2, 3, a lot of sequels. It's more challenging for us. Why? Because the same animators, the same team that does the original does the sequel. And you know, it's such a fragmented piece of work, like I explained earlier, that working 2 years, 2.5 years with certain sets, with certain characters, and to have to do that over again for 2 years, the animators have to really like the characters they're playing with, because it's a long period of time. In major studios, major studios have 8, 9, 1,000, even more than 1,000 animators, so they can have one team working on the number 1 and a totally different team, the same studio, but a totally different team working on number 2, etc. For us, it's not the case. So if we were to do a third one, it's a possibility, if we're being asked to, I would say. And there's certainly material to do a third one. But in the meantime, as I say, Bigfoot Family is number 8. We are in the middle of the production, past the middle of the production of number 9, called Chicken Hair, and we are starting number 10. So if there would be a sequel, it would be 2 or 3 films after the last one. So it's a possibility, but I don't know. I can truly not answer that question.
We wait for that. A question coming from Brussels. From Sasquatch to Bigfoot, beyond a brilliant creation, your film is an acknowledgement of the Native American culture. So can your work be received, especially by the kids, as a tool of resilience among different cultures?
That's something you should ask the kids, I guess. It's hard, it's hard to answer that kind of question because, you make a film, you hope, the first thing that you hope is that a lot of people will see the film. And for whatever reason, you hope that it will, please. The challenge with family films, actually, a little bit less on a streaming platform, because on a streaming platform, the kids can watch the film alone at home. The parents don't need necessarily to be there. When you go to a movie theater, and we made Bigfoot with theatrical release in mind. In fact, the film has been or will be released in more than 50 theaters, 50 territories theatrically. So, and the challenge is that you have to please the parents and you have to enchant the kids. So it's kind of challenging. So answer that kind of question, it's tough, because you make the film, you put everything you have into it, and you hope that it works, and then you try to listen to what people like about it, why they didn't like, why they're coming back, and
Yeah. I have another question concerning the business of entertainment more. I was wondering, with the closure of theaters, what is your opinion on the new strategy studios came up with to compensate? Pivot as a filmmaker, and from a business perspective, do you believe in sustainability of this new business model? Pivot, I don't know if you are familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
No, me neither. So if the person can clarify, it would be better. So another question. Belgium is very famous for its bande dessinée. Where are we standing worldwide in our animation industry about the bande dessinée? Cartoon.
Well, the thing is it's true. In Belgium, we have a big tradition of graphic art. We know the most famous one, Tintin, etc. But still today, still there's a lot of and again, I come back to the what I said earlier about the mini Hollywood studio on the desktop. Now we have the technology to be able to I was going to use the word exploit that talent, but in a positive way, to get that talent to work on big international projects, because we can now create a viable studio in Belgium. One of the key things, though, one of the key things, because it's kind of a business question as well, a key element of our success is the fact that we have owned everything that we've produced, from the first motion simulation ride film that we made in 1990, a film that actually played for 17 years non-stop at the Excalibur Hotel in Las Vegas, a film called Devil's Mine Ride. When you own it, well, the 17th year, they still pay you a licensing fee. If you work as a service company, it's tough, because you make money, you make more money up front because they pay you and they give, you build in a margin, and then you grade. When you finance your own film, there's always a certain risk. But if you're a service company and you get a gap between two productions and you have 150 people waiting for work, you're in trouble in a very short period of time. And for us, having produced our own library, first of specialty films, IMAX, theme parks, and all that, and now we already, as I say, we're starting our 10th feature film, we have recurring revenues. And that has been a key to the long-term viability. I don't want to bring everything back to finances, to money, but it's a key point. You cannot make films without money. Now, we also know that maybe things will change a little bit now with this with this English-speaking territory success. But we also knew that we could not exceed 20 million. 20 million was our threshold of where we were comfortable with a 20 million budget. Unless we made some really, really bad film, we felt that we could, make it work financially. So all these elements play together, but really being able to have your own studio, use the talent that we have around us in Belgium, in Europe. Well, we have talent from everywhere, actually. We have a lot of Belgian animators, but we have French animators. We even have American, South American. We have people from worldwide. It's about 30% Belgian, 30% French, and 40% worldwide talent that we grab from, that we attract from a little bit all around the world.
Speaking of financing, we have another question regarding that. You mentioned an average cost of 20 million for your movies compared to the 100 million for US studios. How do you manage the financing part? Self-funded, funds, else? Does it help to be based in Brussels, for instance?
Well, that's one of the key elements of staying in Brussels. The very first one, Fly Me to the Moon, was kind of a crazy move. We had a very successful worldwide business of theme park films, IMAX film, and we had cash reserves, a lot of cash on our bank accounts. At one point we said, what do? Pay ourselves dividend, which we had never done, or invest in a film? And we decided to invest in a feature film, which was a little bit crazy because nobody does that, to invest their own money. So the very first one, Fly Me to the Moon, was 100% self-financed with a little bit of a tax shelter money, because there is a tax shelter scheme in Belgium where companies that make profit in Belgium can invest in a film and take a tax deduction. After that, we teamed up with some major international distributors and had a mix of self-financing, tax shelter, and pre-sales. So, and today it's still pretty much that business model. We raise about 4 to 5 million euros from the Belgian tax center. It's capped. I mean, we always go and always are able to get the maximum that we can get in Belgium, which is about 4 to 5 million euros in tax shelter financing. Then our activity of specialty film is still a very important activity. Not last year, because last year was catastrophic. We went from we had only 20% of our revenue, on normal revenue. We lost 80% because all the theme parks are closed, all the museums are closed. But that part of our activity is kind of, I would say, subsidizing a little bit the feature film, or at least gives us the cash necessary to be able to find the liquidity to make these films. And then all our films, as I say, all our films have been relatively successful. And so as soon as we announce a new film, we have now a network of very loyal and very supportive distributors who will take our films. We've never had less than 50 territories taking our films. All of Europe, Asia. Sometimes we have the toughest territories have always been English-speaking territories and Japan. Japan is a really difficult one. But we're one of the very few, maybe the only studio in the world that can boast to have sold every single feature film to China. We've had a really good relationship with Chinese distributors, and our films have been always quite successful in China. So it's a worldwide operation, and it's true. I mean, Netflix changes a little bit the outlook, because wow, that's yet on another level. But it's been a well-oiled machine, and it's been, you know, it's been 30 years in the making. It's not like you know, you come up and a good example, pandemic. If this were our first film, we had pre-sold the film to, I think, 57 territories. We were scheduled to release to deliver the film to our distributor at the end of June. Then they can still decide when they release the film. A number of them were going to release it in the summer, in August, and another batch was going to release it in the fall. Comes the pandemic, we do deliver on time. We have contract, and usually they pay a little down payment when you sign a contract, and they pay the bulk, 90%, 80%, when you deliver. This case was in June. And surprisingly, and to their credit, every single distributor has paid us the fee in full. Nobody has tried to renegotiate, you know, claiming a pandemic and all that. And that, you know, I'm really, they were grateful that we deliver on time, but we are extremely grateful that they honor the deal without trying to. Now, having said that, we've been a reliable supplier of films, because this, actually, I don't think there's any single studio around the world outside a North American studio that has produced as many films as we have. we are now starting our 10th film. The first one came out 12 years ago. So it's a little less than one film a year. But that's an incredible stream of films that distributors, independent distributors, can rely on. So it's a win-win for everybody, and we have a good, loyal kind of a group of distributors sustaining us worldwide. So all that takes time to build up, but it's working.
I have two last questions because we are running out of time soon. So have you thought about making an animated movie about Belgium and their traditions, like Coco did for Mexico, or make a remake from a Belgian story like Jan zonder Vrees? I don't know if you know those.
Well, the key is I would be totally open and totally, in fact, there's been a Belgian film made by Spielberg, Tintin. I would be totally open, but it always starts with the script. And we are kind of hesitating now to develop scripts from scratch. Now, we did with the Bigfoot Family. I wrote the story, but the characters already existed. So it was not out of the blue. It was built on a very strong foundation. But we are not a large enough company, because when you start developing scripts, you need to develop 4 or 5 scripts to have 1 or 2 that you're happy with. Because you start and you don't really know. You may have a great story, but there's still a big difference between a great story and a great script. So it's tricky. And now, at the very beginning, it was really, really hard, because thousands of scripts are being written every year for live action feature films. Not so many animated films. Why? Because there's not many buyers. The major studios develop their own content, their own script, Pixar, Imageworks, DreamWorks, etc., etc. And so in between there, you have a few scripts that are being developed, but not that many. So it's tricky. But now that we have an established reputation, we're getting really great scripts. And I was really, really, really happy that we're working with Sony. Sony actually gave us a script, one of their scripts for us to make. And that was, I found a really kind of a sign of recognition on their part. And it's an absolutely great script written by a great writer and based on a US comic strip. So I'm really happy about that. So yeah, Belgium, why not? But bring us a script.
And I have a last question, and it concerning the actors. As a Belgian actors, I would like to work for one of your production. Do you also work with Belgian talents for the voice recording in French and Netherlands? Thank you.
Actually, it's a good question. And yes, our films are family-based films. And we target, a broad audience, but fairly young kids. So all our films are dubbed in the local language worldwide, which is not the case with live action films. Some are just subtitled in Europe. But our films, whether it's in Iceland, in Denmark, in Flanders, or wherever they're dubbed, we handled the dubbing of our own films, so the voice recording in the local language on the first one, on Fly Me to the Moon. That's the only time we did it. In fact, even though speaking English, French, and Dutch, I could do these 3 languages. But we don't get involved in that. It's actually the distributor's responsibility. I know major studios control the dubbing worldwide, but independent producers, no. You sell it to a French distributor, the French distributor will do the voice dubbing. In a Korean, they will do the Korean dubbing, etc., etc. So yes, our films are being dubbed in French, often in Belgium, but never under our control. So what voice talent should do, they should actually contact the distributors, because they are in charge of that, and rather than the producer. Now, some producers may be doing it when it's only 1 or 2 voices, but for us, we have 57 territories. It's maybe, I don't know exactly how many languages, but probably 30 languages. We have all the Scandinavian countries, we have Russia, we have the Baltic countries. We have so many different languages that we truly don't get. We prepare the work, we prepare the soundtracks, we prepare all the elements so they can dub, but we don't get involved beyond that. And we don't. And also another last aspect is that a lot of the local distributors. It's often the case in Germany, in France, in Korea, in China, they hire well-known actors to dub. We don't really, on the first two films I did, Fly Me to the Moon and Sammy, we had, there were actually unions, Screen Actors Guild actors in Los Angeles, Christopher Lloyd, Nicola Sheridan, Tim Curry, Melanie Griffith worked on our first films. Since we only working with voice talent, but we don't go for big names because it's expensive on one hand, and then also now it might change if we get another big platform or big North American release, we might get bigger names to start with. But locally, they often hire at least 2 or 3 well-known actors, well-known, and sometimes musicians as well. Or I know in Korea, they often hire musicians to voice the characters. And that's for marketing purpose. So we really don't get involved in that.
Okay, I will pass the message. So with that, I would like to give the floor to our Consul General, Ambassador Slowagan, for a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Baptiste. And Ben, on behalf of everybody who has been participating here, congratulations with your result, with your success. But I watched the movie, I saw it, and I was really grasped by the story, but also by the animation. And I really think the movie is incredibly attracting, so I can recommend it to everybody as really worthwhile watching. So I think you are a very good example of a success story, and in this case, I'm very happy to say a Belgian success story. Thanks to your motivation, your dynamics, your energy that you display, but also thanks to the approach which you explain now here, keeping all the production, the fruit of your work in your property, and that means in your intellectual property, but also in your mind's property. So I think that is an approach that we can really recommend to some of your colleagues who want to make it here, but not only in the film industry, in also other industries where imagination is needed. So I think what you're the perfect example of motivation combined with talent really does make it, and congratulations for that, Ben. So I hope to see you in LA when you're here. Please call on us, and then we'll be very happy to sit down with you and to continue listening on your further projects. I'm very much eager to know where you're going from here. Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you all for joining this special event today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and stay tuned for other events of the Belgian Business Club. By the way, we have received already one good answer to our contest, and we will follow up by email. Thank you so much again, Ben, for making yourself available for the Belgian community and have accepted to share some insights of your work. We really appreciate and seeing your success story, I will say, making us very proud as Belgians. So this conversation will be available on YouTube for replay soon. And have a nice day all. Thank you.
Thank you.